Welcome one more day to Space and Harmony. Remember, this is a bilingual channel. I publish videos in English and Spanish. I'm in Spain, the north of Madrid, and I'm enjoying now a wonderful afternoon. It's around 16 o'clock, and autumn is very comfortable in Spain. We don't have much cold and rain, and autumn is my favorite season of the year to enjoy the colors of the trees and also the weather, because it's not too cold, not too wet all the time, and sometimes we have this wonderful sun. Now, I announced that I have another channel called Vital and Armonía, which is more practical, and I have actually started to record an introductory course on soul therapy, inner knowledge, self-discovery, and I'll publish the videos in English and Spanish as well. 1 week in Spanish, the following in English. This will be short videos, preferably, and I'll go step by step. I'll open a web with the program. It's already available in Spanish, but I have so much work to do that I cannot do it all at once. So be patient. If you know Spanish, you already have the program there. The video 1 is already recorded and published. You already have other videos with subtitles, but I'm going to start videos with myself speaking in English. Now, to begin with today's subject, I'll make it short as well. I'll make short videos focusing on themes so that each person can go and search for a subject and have a short overview. Today I'm going to speak about the Jubilee Year, and I'll focus on the external or social cultural aspect, especially the economic and spiritual sense in a global perspective, because the following day we'll go into the Jubilee of the Soul. I'll make another video for that. For those of you who don't know what a Jubilee Year is, in principle it's an agricultural economic cycle. It lasts around 50 earthly years. It's known as a great Jubilee Year. And in that span of time there are transformations. And at the beginning of a Jubilee Year there is a great economic change. Supposedly there must be a forgiveness of debts. Banks should forgive debts, but as they don't want to forgive anything, nature forces the changes. And economists know this. Human beings are so wise creatures that they want to live as they want, but the cycles of the universe must be respected, and therefore when these cycles are not respected and understood, there are painful processes, and we have been living those painful processes here on Earth. I'll give you very clear examples, because we are coming from Jubilee that began in 1980, but we are heading towards another Jubilee which will begin in the 2030. This is why there is a 2030 agenda. And many economists and geopoliticians know about all this, but they don't tell the people, because for them we are just cattle. So now, in order for you to understand where we are coming from, remember that in 1929 there was a huge economic depression, especially in the US. Then in the 1930s, we can pinpoint the beginning of a new Jubilee. So there was a forced forgiveness of debt, because all was destroyed. Even in Europe, we entered such a huge collapse with the Second World War, and later on it took quite a while to restore all that. In Spain there was a civil war, but around the 50s, economy began to get stable, and in the 60s, all was running again. Remember, there was a baby boom in the US, and also in parts of Europe, all began to get more stable. And there was also the birth of the so-called counterculture with the hippies and other movements that somehow rejected all the socio-political conditions, and many souls incarnated in those years in order to bring a change. There were different waves. These souls are usually known as indigo souls. They are very rebellious. The hippies were somehow rebellious. But notice how they failed. They were absorbed by the ways of the world. They got lost in drugs, in mixtures of religion, spirituality that lead nowhere. Obviously, many were experimenting. They didn't have a proper guidance. It's very difficult to find a true connection in the tree of life. So very few manage to transmit something really transformative. But it's not their fault. The situation was very difficult. And somehow they prepared the ground for the following generation. In the 1980s, there came another group of souls. Some of them were indigos as well. I'd say the 1980 is the beginning of the new Jubilee, which goes up to the 2030. And I have a video about star seeds, messianic souls, in case you want to refresh the memory, or if you don't know and want to expand the subject. I'll leave the link down below. This is actually a complementary video for that one. And the souls that began to be born from the 80s are usually called millennials. I include myself because I'm one of the veterans. I was born on this planet this time at the beginning of the 80s, so I have some experience already. And you probably know as well that millennials are usually regarded as lazy, ignorant, rebellious. They are ranting against everything. But we have to be more compassionate and try to understand the situation. Because those of us who were born in the 80s saw a situation which was very complicated. In the US, for instance, you already had GMOs, genetically modified food. You already had a superficial culture where there was a total disconnection from a sense of humanity that was being lost. In Europe, that came later. I remember that even in the 80s, I could eat fruit that tasted like fruit. Bread tasted like bread. Some people still had a sense of honesty, of the right behavior. But in the 90s, there was a dissolution of many of those attitudes. the criminality rates increased. And this was because there was a dissolution in the new Jubilee. I remember that we suffered a profound economic transformation here in Europe in the 90s. My fellows and I in the school were taken to the Congress, and there we were explained that we would be able to travel all around Europe with citizenship as members of the European community. We would have one coin, common rights, and I remember all that was very positive. I benefited from some of the facilities. When I was in the university, I was given the possibility to study in Ireland to complete some of my studies, perfectioning my English. And these were facilities that we were given as European citizens. And those changes are very positive. I'm not saying all political strategies are wrong. It was a good idea to make the European Union. But now I can see there are hidden agendas behind many of these movements. I also noticed that around 2000, especially after the Twin Towers event, some experimentations began concerning the health, and I remember they began to apply, I don't want to say the name, people started to be injected things into their veins, rubbish straight into vein, because supposedly there were some flus coming from birds and things like that. Every year there was a new program of injection, at least here in Spain. I don't know in the US or other parts, but here in Spain people started to get obsessed with all that, and many got the thing. Right now some people say that they get sick from time to time, and they understand it's because of what they put into their blood, but this is due to ignorance. So we have to be very careful about what we put into our body. Do not let any expert or scientist tell you what you have to do if you don't understand what you are doing, because true life doesn't work that way. We don't need anything external to be healed. Remember that what heals is a connection with the harmonia of life. Even doctors use medicines that have no chemical effect, and they know people get better because of the placebo effect. They say, well, it's just the 30-40% of the medicines, but I'd say that even the people that get better with the remaining 60 or 70%, it's not because of the medicine, but mostly because of the attitude. If the person thinks something is going to cure, well, that generates a whole mechanism, immune work, that benefits the whole system and therefore contributes to the healing of the person. Therefore, this thing about injecting rubbish into vein, it's just part of business and control of the population. It's interesting. Some groups are interested in having people sick in order to sell medicines and sell conditions that we are going to see now. Because I can understand very clearly, after several decades of experience, that the political powers are fighting for conquering the new Jubilee that will begin in 2030. They want to be prepared for the new reset. They know something is going to happen, and they want to establish their own conditions. There are several opposing parties. You know, the two main tendencies nowadays are globalism and patriotism or local economies on the other side, which I think is more productive and positive, because we need to prosper locally to support those who are around, and of course promote more natural products devoid of GMOs and other poisonous substances, all of which belong to a globalist economy. Don't forget that, because in order to move huge amounts of food and products, you need to modify things. Some products are not even found in a land, and they are forced to thrive in other lands by means of genetic modification. And this is not natural, this is making people sick. But they just want to make money. They don't give a damn about the health of people. And we have to stop that. We have to understand how it works, educate people more, so that this psychopath Wisacris cannot brainwash people so easily. And some say there is going to be a positive reset, that things are going to be working better, there will be a more prosperous and generous economy. And I'm not saying this won't be the case, but we have to be very careful, because there can be traps in that also. I remember that 15 years ago I began to hear about something called Nesara, which is the acronym for National Economy, Security and Reformation Act, or something like that. And they explained that with this sort of act, first in the US, people would have access to a global universal salary, regardless of their condition, race, culture, situation, and they would have access to other facilities as well. And nowadays, some people are speaking much about the global version of Nesara, and they call it Gesara. This wouldn't be just for the US, but for Europe and maybe other parts. The idea would be to go back to the gold standard, getting rid of inflation and deflation in economy, to have a more supported way of exchanging goods and services, all of which required local economies. Therefore, the globalists are not interested in that. Anyway, I can also see situations in which we are forced to inject something into ourselves, or fit into a straight pattern in order to receive a salary. That's not appropriate either. That's not in tune with Armonia. That's another form of dictatorship, another form of hidden communism. And we are already tired about all these things. I think it's important to support people economically, even if they are not working in something the system has produced. I think all people must have access to an economic background, because some people are just working at home, cleaning or helping their parents, or they are artists and they need some support. Many people are having to struggle in conditions that are inhuman. And I know this because I have worked very hard, even playing on the streets, without working in conventional jobs. I got tired of many jobs, and I got very sick because of doing things that I should have never done to work, to thrive. Now I'm trying to express my soul differently to help others. And I think we all should be working in something to help others, to bring the connections, to make the soul free. And this is the theme of the Jubilee of the Soul for the next video.